Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tava Karakamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Singham Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jayo Jagadishare Jayo Jagadishare Jayo Jagadishare. Good evening, everybody. Hello. Hello to you. Starting to get a little hot, huh? Yeah. Okay, everybody. This is the time of the day, the time of the evening, where every day in the Bhakti Yoga Rishikesh, the Rishikesh Kirtan Fest, that we have the question and answer session, where the doors are wide open for anyone to ask questions. And that's what I turn to you for now. Would anyone like to begin the evening with a question? Yes.
Hare Krishna. It is about this morning when I had a question about self-love and more closer, about self-love and how to be a servant, because sometimes like if you are a servant, then you are like forgetting about your own being somehow. Like I get a little bit confused with that. Yeah.
So we spoke about dasyam today, this dasyam, service, and that the nature of the self is actually service. It's not, but there's a misconception that we have about service. There's a lot of misconceptions that we're prone to. In this world that we live in, the yogis see it as a reflection, in a sense. It's not the place that's designed according to our true nature. It's a place that's designed for us to pursue a false idea of who we are, right? So everything's artificial. Just like we've discussed this in some of the earlier talks that we had, and now that was a few weeks ago, so we can talk about, I can bring these things up again, I suppose. If a little boy sees his father driving a car, then there's a desire that springs up in the, you could say in the heart, or you could say in the mind of the boy. And that desire is, I want to drive the car. But reality will not facilitate that desire. You understand? Because the boy's too small, doesn't have the motor skills, can't even reach the gas pedal and the brake. Reality will not fulfill that desire for the boy. So if he wants to fulfill that desire, it will have to take place in a realm of illusion, in a realm of reflection, in a virtual realm. He'll need a car that's not a real car, but that is a reflection of a real car. It's based on a real car, facsimile of a real car. So the father may even just get like a cardboard box, right? And draw some wheels on it and some headlights on it, and maybe give him something that seems like a steering wheel, and then say, here's a car. And the boy will sit in that car and pursue the desire that reality wouldn't facilitate. And if you told that boy, that's not a real car, that's a cardboard box, he doesn't want to hear that. He wants to be in the illusion and feel like he's driving a car. And so this is the realm. There's this concept, spiritual concept, that if we get to the nature of the soul, the self, we find that it's eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. And that bliss is understood in its deepest expression as love. If we go deeper into it, we find it's love. And if we truly understand what love is, it's always expressed through service. Real love is expressed through service, because it's natural that we want to serve the one we love. By giving service to the one we love, they feel pleasure. And when they feel pleasure, we feel pleasure. And we seek pleasure by nature. So therefore, by nature, we serve. But we serve in a realm of love, not in a realm of exploitation or a realm of oppression. Now, we enter into this facsimile world to pursue another idea, that rather than serve this central figure, this root of all existence, maybe if I were the center and others were serving me, then I would feel happiness. And so we pursue that, and sometimes we get a little happiness. Sometimes we play that illusion, I'm the center. Reality won't facilitate that, but the illusory realm may facilitate it to some degree. But even when we play that role, we try to play that role in the artificial realm, we find some pleasure and it's followed by pain. We find some excitement and it's followed by boredom. We find some joy and it's followed by sorrow. And we become very in this ups and downs, where there's not one spiritual center that everybody's revolving around, but there's many people that are trying to be the center, and they're bumping against each other and trying to get the others to serve them, trying to be the center. If I'm trying to be the center and you're trying to be the center and you're trying to be the center and you're trying to be the center, we're going to have a mess. There's going to be a lot of conflict. And that's what we find in this artificial reflected world, a lot of conflict going on. And through that conflict, we may feel like, why should I be the servant? Others are conflicting with me. Others want me to submit to them. I won't play that role. I'm not interested in that role. And we're losing touch with our nature all the more. Now, there's all these traditions, all these spiritual traditions, that they all know this, And we quoted one biblical verse, that it is more blessed to give than it is to receive, right? And if we go deep into the actual language, into the Greek of that verse, it's not just saying that one's more blessed, but it's saying it's one's more blessed with happiness. That we actually become happier when we serve, because it is our nature. It's what we're designed to do. We're designed to love. And because we're designed to love, we're designed to serve. But we live in an exploitive world. We live in a world of conflict, in a world where caring about the other is not necessarily what we encounter with others. So our tendency to serve, our natural tendency to serve, can be exploited. And we can become averse to the idea. Then we need some distance, maybe. Then we need some space from that, but not from service, right? Maybe we just need some distance from from that person that's trying to exploit us, right? But if we can find that object of love that's genuine, then our service will be natural. We shouldn't allow. Sometimes a person is abused, and which is unfortunate enough. But then they shut themselves off from love, which makes them still more unfortunate, right? And so you mentioned the term self-love. That's not exactly. I've searched through Vedānta and Bhagavad Gita. I have trouble locating that concept. But it's a little different. What they have is self-knowledge. If you know yourself, then what we call self-love. You see, self-love can get, I'm going to go take a bubble bath because I deserve it. And I should, get this and that because, who should tell me what to do? This is for me now. I'm going to go get a manicure and a pedicure and a facial and that's self-love. That's serving the body. And we all, in order to operate well within this world, we need a certain amount of rest. We need a certain amount of recreation. We need a certain amount of restoring ourselves. That's fine. But let's understand what it is, So the yogis don't speak so much about self-love, but they speak about knowing the self, atma-jnana, self-knowledge. If you actually know yourself, there's nothing. You won't suffer from exploitation, or also from what's a big issue now is like feelings of unworthiness. That's, I think, when we say self-love, it's addressing that particularly in the world that we live in today. It's gone hyper with all of this social media and scrolling, and seeing everybody's pictures about what they're doing and how beautiful they are and how wonderful their life is, and oh my god, and my life is like so unimpressive and boring, and I'm not doing anything wonderful in the world. I'm just living this very ordinary life. Am I worthy at all? Who am I? Then we try a little bit of dating, and then with that whole thing too, it's just like you're getting turned down here and you're getting turned down there, and you go onto the dating app, and the people that you're interested aren't interested in you, and all of this is weighing and weighing more and more. It's creating an anxiety in the mind. In our false sense of ego, we're thinking everyone's better than me, and we really begin to feel some pain. And then someone comes along and says, "You need self-love. You need to love yourself." There's some truth in that, but really, what will and the way that'll manifest is like saying, love everything about yourself. Love your body. Uh, Maybe you're. Well, let me put it this way. It's not by loving what you're not that you're going to feel restored and healthy and whole. It's by understanding who you really are, what you really are, that's going to serve that. Understanding that I am a spark of God's energy. I am luminous by nature. I am brilliant by nature. I am blissful by nature. I'm just out of touch with it. If I can even begin to understand that, not even fully realize it, but if I can even begin to understand that, I can pass through this world feeling very fine about myself. And I can also look into the darker areas of myself without becoming confused or depressed, and not bypass them, but I can actually confront the darker things inside myself, and grow. So I don't. I think often with good intention, people are trying to address the ways that we suffer in this world. My personal conviction is that the knowledge of how to do that best we can find in not just the spiritual tradition, but in so many spiritual traditions. And it's really knowing the self. So again, all that being said, if someone is exploiting you, then you need to create some distance. You need to recognize that. But truth is always what will set us free, more than a false story that we tell ourselves. Possible. Is that okay? Did that address your question? Okay, thank you. It was a good question. It's a really important question. I think now more than ever. Yeah. Thank you. All right, everybody. Here we are. Who has the next question? Interested to hear, eager to hear. Anyone like to raise their hand? Yes, sir. Tell me your name. I don't think I've gotten your name. Augustine. Nice name. Where are you from?
I'm from Spain. My mother's English, my father's Spanish. So yeah, I speak both languages. Okay, I'm a bit confused because I'm one of them type of guys that my mind is everywhere and nowhere. I would say naturally dispersed, bouncing from one place to the other. But at the same time, I'm very open-minded, and I don't feel. I'm always been a rebel of feeling myself conditioned in one path or one way of thinking. I always question everything, so I don't fall in this, chain of habits or I would say a more specific word, dogmatic. Be dogmatic about or fanatic about any way of understanding spirituality. Let's say for this, so I've been practicing different. I'm open different, Bhakti, Hatha yoga, even a bit of Christian, a bit of Buddhist, a bit of this, a bit of that, and I have noticed one thing that people tend to that they follow one path say, okay, no, this is a real path. This is the only path. Like Bhakti is the only path, or Hatha Yoga the only path, or meditation is the only practice, real practice. And I was talking to some yogis, and they were saying that one path will take you to the another. It will all combine in one eventually. And I'm a bit confused in that sense. Can you give me your point of view of that, or the Bhagavad Gita's point of view?
It's a really good question. It's really, I think, when it comes to the spiritual circles that we move in this world today, especially when we look to Eastern thought or Hinduism or Vedanta, your question, I think, may be the most important question. I'm going to really zoom out, if you don't mind. There's so much to be said about this. It used to be that within this Vedantic kind of world, there are two basic ways of interpreting it. Okay? You with me? Okay. So one of them was the idea that the self. Well, there's two schools. One we're going to call Advaita Vedanta, and one we're going to call Bhakti Vedanta. Two ways of looking at the ancient Vedic texts. Two ways of interpreting them. In Advaita Vedanta, Advaita means non-dual. Everything is one. So there they say, both schools accept that we are eternal, that we are full of knowledge by nature and conscious, and that we are blissful by nature. But the Advaita Vedanta school says that the conception that you are you and I am me, that we have our individual existence, that's an illusion. There, in the end, when we realize the truth, we realize that all of these ideas that I'm me, that you're you, all of that's all was imposed on one truth. When you find that truth, you find there's just this divine light. That's all there is. There's no form. There's no individual existences within that. There's just one. When you wake up, you achieve that, you realize that, and you are free. Then the other school of Vedanta says, we see some problems with the way that you've interpreted these texts. We think you went a little too far in certain things, and you ignored certain things. But if you look into these texts, you can see that I am always me, you are always you. Now, you asked me Bhagavad Gita's presentation on this, and Bhagavad Gita says, "Natvevaham jatu nasam natvamne me janadipa." First thing Krishna says to Arjuna on the battlefield practically is, never is a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor all these warriors on this battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. I'm always me, you're always you. Arjuna's completely confused at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna turns to Arjuna and says, have you heard me? Is your illusion now dispelled? And Arjuna says, yes, my illusion is now dispelled. He doesn't say, I realize that I am one with everything, that there is no individuality, that here's my universal form. You showed me a universal form. I also have a universal form. He says, no, now I'm prepared. This goes back to service. Now I'm prepared to carry out your order. Now that my illusion's gone, I realize my relationship with God. I don't realize that I am God. I realize that I have a relationship with God. So there are two different ways that this has been understood. Now, that being said, the first school says, doing your bhakti practices, sometimes you're in the temple and you're worshiping the deity, and sometimes you're singing these songs about devotion, the feelings that you have for this god or goddess. That's a good thing to do. It will bring you up to a higher stage. But if you want to realize the full truth, you have to let go of all those ideas. Because in the end, there's no other object to worship. It's not like there's a worshiper and the worshipped. Everything is just one. That's all there is. Love isn't a real thing. Love has no existential reality. Love is an emotion of this world, something that passes through the mind. You need to let go of all those ideas. You've been worshiping this form of Krishna. That form is an illusion, because all form is an illusion, right? Because form by nature is limited. You need to let go of all of that. This is what they're saying. So all your bhakti, it's a step, but in the end you have to leave all that behind. Leave behind thoughts of love, leave behind thoughts of form, leave behind thoughts of yourself being an individual. Let go of it all and rise to this higher platform and see there's only oneness. Okay? They say that our identity as an individual is something like this. Are you ready for this? This is a real important analogy that's used by the Vedantins. They say, like, if you were to step outside of your house at nighttime, you open up the door, you look outside, and the first thing you see is a snake. You think, oh no, the dangerous snake, you close your door. I'm not going out today because there's a dangerous snake right on my doorstep. Right? But then in the morning, you open up the door, expecting the snake to be gone. And now it's the light of day. You can see everything. It was dark at night. But now in the light of day, you can see, oh, look, it wasn't a snake, it was a rope. Right? It was a rope there. I felt this fear because I imposed the idea of a snake onto the rope. But that was just a mental imposition. And now in the light of the day, I can see that it's a rope, and I can remove that mental imposition, and I no longer have any fear. I'm free. Right? Okay, so that's their position. Now the other school says, hold it. This is an interesting analogy, but we think you didn't fully understand it correctly. Because in order to impose the idea of a snake onto a rope, what does one have to have experienced in their life before? They have to have seen a snake. A snake must exist and a rope must exist as two different things in order to impose the idea of a rope on a snake, right? And so so the first school, the non-dualists, are saying that we've imposed an idea of individuality on the oneness. And once we realize that that's a mental imposition, it's removed in the light of knowledge, and you realize I am one. But where did we get the idea of our individuality? It must exist in reality in order for it to be imposed. You see? Right? Yes? And not only that, when you mistake one thing for another, the reason why we would mistake one thing for another is because of the similarities. Because they share certain attributes. What is the attribute of a rope that it shares with a snake? It's long, it's kind of thin, you can coil up, right? Certain attributes of the rope are there in the snake. So therefore, it's natural to mistake a rope for a snake because they share common attributes. But what this first school, the Advaita Vedantins, are saying is that God, the Supreme, the only thing that exists is this one energy, and it has no attributes. It's just oneness. It has no form. It doesn't talk. It doesn't walk. It's just energy. It has no. They argue this. It has no attributes. So how do you impose onto that attributes if it's so dissimilar? You understand? How can we if we have no attributes? How can we mistake ourselves as something that does have attributes when that's so diametrically opposed? So they're saying, no, we are imposing something here. We're just imposing a false idea of who we are, right? We have individuality eternally, but we just have a false idea of my individuality. I think I'm this body. I'm a man. I'm an American. I'm an Indian. I'm black. I'm white. I'm a woman. I'm an animal. Right? We go through all these different bodies and we impose that body onto our identity. That's the mistake that's made there. That's the false mental imposition that's placed on top of the self. Right? So the Bhakti Vedanta school is saying you will always be you. Everyone else will always be themselves. God will always be God. And we have an eternal connection through love with that being. So these are two different schools. Clear? Studying the same books but coming up with different ideas. Now, centuries later, another idea comes along. And I want to say this. Both of these schools of thought have powerful philosophers in them. And they understand the rules of the game, in a sense. They say in order to create a lineage that interprets these ancient texts, you have to write commentaries on them. There's 3 sets of texts that you need to write a commentary on. And you make your philosophical presentation. And then another school comes along and says, I see what you wrote. I believe you're 80% correct, but there's 20% where you're incorrect, and we need to address that. See, you have logical inconsistencies in your presentation. And then they establish another lineage of Vedanta. That makes sense to everyone? This is the tradition of ancient India. This is how it's handed down in orthodox kind of schools of thought. Now, I understand that we have a bit of a rebellion against dogmatism, but it's not mere dogmatism. It's like, can we make this make sense? Does your explanation really make sense? You need to be able to present how it does. And so later, this is how I see it. Later, other teachers come along that don't take up that challenge of writing these commentaries and presenting how this is true. And what they say is both sides are correct. It doesn't matter which one you do. It all goes to the same way. As a matter of fact, you can worship any god, any goddess. You can have a faith that ultimately all is one. You can have a faith that ultimately everything is individual. Pick whatever one you like, and it all goes to the same place. So their phrase is yata mata tata pata. As many people, as many paths, they say, right? So is that true or is it not? Now, if you go to the Bhagavad Gita, you don't find that. But you find something subtle. In the Bhagavad Gita, you're going to find it's going to say there's many different paths, right? It's going to say that there's validity and truth to all these different paths. But according to what you want, that's going to determine what you get. If there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, Yanti deva vrta devan, pitri yanti pitri vrtaha, bhutani yanti bhuteja, yanti madhyajino pimam. Krishna says some people worship the ghosts. They go to the ghosts. Some people worship the forefathers. They go to the forefathers. Some people worship the devas, the gods. They go to those gods and goddesses. And some people worship me, and they come to me. And he goes on to describe exactly what that means and where it leads and the differences and the distinctions. So he's saying different paths do lead to different places. Okay? He says another thing too, that different paths can be done to get to him if you make that the goal of the path. So it's a little subtle what we're saying here, you know? Let me see if I can sum it up. It's not that it just doesn't matter what you do. You all go to this. You all get the same. You come to the same conclusion. Sometimes different paths can lead to the same goal if that goal is clearly laid out. If I want to practice Ashtanga yoga, go off into the forest, sit quietly, close my eyes, practice going into a deep state of trance, go within my own heart for the purpose of seeing God in my own heart, and then ultimately offering my love to God, then that path will take me to bhakti, which will take me to divine love. If I want to practice jnana yoga, again, go off into the forests, analyze all my desires through knowledge, see the futility in my material desires, let them all go, become free of them, and then surrender to God, connect with God. Then jnana took me to the path of bhakti, right? So different paths can take you to the same place if you have that goal laid out. But that doesn't mean that anything you do is going to take you there, right? Yeah. So one needs to understand what their goal is, how that particular path is going to get them there. Otherwise, you could choose different paths and go in completely different directions.
Can I I add something
Please.
to what you said? Yes, you know, when I start experimenting everything, basically, and one of the craziest thing I did is experiment in shamanism and South American shamanism. And but one thing that really awakened my senses is what they call to the spirit, and they call it intention. The name of intention, and it was really for me very like awakened in the sense that, in other words, what I understand. I think I understand your message is where you put your intention. Uh,
Augustine,
yes.
what you're saying is so important. Okay, I wanna take your conversation to one next level, and it relates to exactly what you just said. When we speak of bhakti, or let's take it back one step. What I've been describing a little bit tonight and on previous nights is that within any tradition, commonly you'll see similar patterns, whether it's Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, shamanism, Native American spirituality, Judaism, practically all these spiritual paths. Um, they have certain patterns, common patterns in them. All right, and that pattern, I'm going to sit. This is a topic that you can really go into a lot of depth on, but I'm just gonna try to outline it in the simplest way. That pattern goes from I approach the divine, I approach spirituality, I approach God to receive the things of this world. I want God to give me a good life. I want God to give me wealth. I want God to give me health. I want God to give me a nice home. I want God to give me whatever it may be. And that can go, in this tradition, that could go up to the achieving higher planets and much greater pleasure. Approaching God for the things of this world. That's called, in Sanskrit, that's called the karmic approach. And within the Vedic text, there's a section of them called the Karma Kunda, the Karma division, that teaches how to get the things of this world, how to approach the divine for the things of this world. Now, the idea is that if one does that, they'll receive the things of this world in this life or the next. And they'll taste the pleasures of this world. They'll taste the good things of this world. And if they're a bit thoughtful, and if they've heard a bit more of these teachings, they'll come to a realization that the things of this world don't really satisfy me, right? Even when I achieve them, I still haven't found the bliss that I'm looking for in life. So maybe the things of this world don't satisfy. Maybe I need to turn within and understand myself. Maybe I need to know, and this word know is important here. I need to know I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, I'm made of spirit, I'm eternal. Happiness is my nature. I need to know all these things. I need to know the self. And so we go from karma, acting, doing action to get the things of this world, to jnana, to knowing oneself. Right? So you go into karma, then up to jnana. But here in first one, you use the word intention. So in the first division, the idea was my intention, my motive is I want the things of this world. I want to enjoy the things of this world.
Yeah, but when I say intention, I mean intention towards God or intention.
That's what I'm saying. My intention towards approaching God is, dear God, what I want from you is the things of this world. That's my intention. That's my motive. Okay. Well, so I'm saying that's one level of approach. The next level approach is I approach the divine for freedom. I'm approaching the divine for freedom from the sufferings of this world. I want to know that I'm beyond the ups and downs of this material body and mind. Release myself from that. That's why I'm approaching spirituality with that intention. Freedom. In Sanskrit, we call this moksha. Right? Yeah. For the first one, we call it bhoga, material enjoyment. That's the goal. That's the intention. For karma. For jnana, the intention is moksha. I want freedom from the sufferings of this world. I want that peace. Right? Now, someone might achieve that level and still find that empty. Now, Augustine, what kind of work do you do?
Right now, I don't do any work.
Well, look at you, living it up. Let's say,
I'm retired.
okay, what did you used to do?
I used to work for the U.S. government,
Really? Okay.
for the Navy, for the U.S. Navy.
Okay. Was it a stressful job?
Very.
Okay. So you had a stressful job working for the U.S. Navy, maybe dealing with a lot of unreasonable people. Okay. So sometimes you're getting up out of bed to go to work, and you're thinking, "Oh God, gotta go get back to this place again." It's building up. I can only take this for so long. I need a break, right? And then you get a ticket, and you go to the Bahamas. And when you go to the Bahamas, none of the things that were disturbing you, none of the things that were causing you stress and anxiety are present there. What's there is peace. You're sitting on a beach all alone. There's the sunlight and the sound of the ocean. Nobody's calling you saying, "Augustine, where are you? We've got problems with the Navy over here. You're not doing your job good enough. You got to meet with this person." None of that. You're free of all that. And you're just, it's such a relief, isn't it? Oh, I can kick back and just find peace. I needed this. It's good for my nervous system. But imagine you find that peace, you find that relief. But after some time, 1 day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, you start to feel empty again, right? Because there's nobody there to share this experience with. You begin to feel lonely. There's a certain emptiness there. And so then, so one can achieve that spiritual peace or that moksha. One can exist in that for a very long time. But because the nature of the self is love, eventually there's a cry for that from within, right? And then that's when the heart opens up and says, "I want divine love." Then one moves on to bhakti. Now there's a whole nother set of literature from the same tradition that's saying this is where it all leads to, is ultimately to divine love. Now I approach God not for the things of this world. That's in one sense a self-centered motive. Not even for relief of the suffering of this world. Even that's a self-centered motive. I take myself out of the center. I put the divine in the center. I rotate around that divine with love. And then in that state, one uncovers love. So you go from action to knowledge to love. From the motive of, I want the things of this world, I want freedom from suffering in this world, I simply approach you out of love, right? Sometimes, like, a man proposes to a woman, let's say, and he speaks the language of love. "I love you. You mean everything to me. I want to make you happy," etc., like that. "Please marry me. I will spend my life making you the happiest woman in the world," etc., things like that. They say. So what if the woman heard the words of love, but she knew all along this person has a different motive, a motive that's not love. They want something from me. Maybe my wealth, maybe I'm famous and they want fame. They have some other motive, you understand? Then even though they're speaking the words of love, the motive is not love, right? Bhakti means there's no other motive, but I love you. I want to please you out of my own love. And then the idea is Krishna saying, I reciprocate that with the same kind of love. I come back with the same selfless love. And my point is, you'll find that in every tradition. Now let me give you an example. In Christianity, the disciples of Jesus asked him a question. Now they were coming from a Jewish background. You had the laws of Moses, right? He comes down from the mountain. He's got 2 tablets, and there's 10 rules there, right? 10 commandments, 10 things God is commanding everybody follow. If you don't follow it, you're going to suffer. God is going to make you suffer. That's the idea. Yes? As it's expressed. So the disciples of Jesus coming from that back, we would call that a very karmic background, platform, level. Don't do bad or you'll suffer. Right? That's the first level, karma. So the disciples asked Jesus, you're a spiritual person. Help us understand. What is the most important commandment? Have you heard this question in the Bible? It was asked. That's a karmic question. That's a question someone on that first level asked. Because the idea is, I don't want to suffer in life. It's hard for me to follow all these rules. But tell me which one is the most important, so I'll make sure I don't break that one. Is it, don't, honor the father or mother, honor the parents, or is it thou shalt not kill? Is that the most important one? Should I make sure I don't do that? You understand? Now, Jesus wasn't operating on that karmic level. He was operating on the bhakti level. So he totally bypassed their whole logic. He said, what is the most important commandment to follow? They're asking him to pick one of the 10. He set that all aside. And this is this is where you started. This is setting aside all the dogma. And he says, here's the most important commandment. To love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. That's a very yogic statement right there. And to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Right? So he said, forget trying to manipulate the rules of karma and finding yourself a comfortable position in this world. Set all that aside. You have so much more potential than that. Try to understand that love is the highest principle and come right up to that platform. Come to love, right? The most important commandment, love God, love your neighbor. That's the commandment. If you live that, you're following all those 10 commandments without even trying. Right? It's just natural because you've come to the full evolution. That was just a step. That was it. Do good things, otherwise bad things are going to happen to you. Okay, I guess I'll do it. So when someone says that bhakti is the full evolution of the self, it's not a sectarian claim. It's not that they're saying our path is better than your path. This is a little subtle, but what I want to share is that seeing through this paradigm of karma, jnana, bhakti, it means that I can see the same progression in all the different spiritual traditions. This is the opposite of sectarianism. What it's doing is it's breaking down sectarianism. Because if someone who's sectarian, if you say, who's more evolved, who's closer to God, they'll say the people in my path, the people in my tradition. But when you understand this nuance of spirituality, that it grows from wanting the things of this world to wanting to escape the pains of this world to divine love, then I see, they have that same thing in all these other traditions. And if you ask me who's more evolved, then I say whoever's come to divine love, it doesn't matter what tradition they're in. That person in another tradition is more evolved than me because the only thing they want in their heart is to love. Whereas I'm still struggling a lot with these lower level intentions. Does that make sense? So this breaks down sectarianism because now it's not based on where you were born, what religion you were born into, or what faith you claim, or it has to do with how you've evolved to the platform of divine love. So when we say bhakti is the full evolution of the self, it's not saying our path is better than yours. It's saying whatever path you're in, understand that the highest goal is to come to divine love. That makes sense? Okay. All right. If I had a blackboard and everything, I'd be drawing these things out and it'd be a little bit easier to get. But okay, thank you. This is a wonderful question. Wonderful question. More questions? Nice to see you, Christine. Yes, okay.
It feels a bit like an unfinished question, but maybe you can help finish it. So there's a lot of talk of like the quantum field. How does Vedanta explain what the quantum field is?
How do you explain quantum?
Oh, it's like the realm of infinite possibility. It's where if we were to play with the energy in the material realm, we can start to create from that field of possibility.
I'll share what little I can because I've never really studied in depth quantum theory and all of that. So I know help me out here and tell me if what I'm about to say is accurate. That my understanding is that quantum mechanics had something to do with when they started to get inside the atom. They saw that on that I don't know if molecular or atomic level, on that atomic level, they saw that the laws that govern the rest of the universe that we're very convinced are solid and unbreakable, that there are other laws working inside the atom. Is it something like that's quantum theory has to do with that? And part of that had to do with understanding time. The time, we think of it in a certain way, but once you get into that atomic level, you see time acts in very different ways. That's about as much as I know about quantum theory. But I also know this, that as these discoveries are being made, that certain scientists that were fascinated by it and making new discoveries in that field had a connection to the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita. Because they saw that the way that they were speaking was consistent with what they were discovering in their quantum theory. So I don't know so much more than that, except to say that I believe that it is naive and less than thorough objectivity to assume that the laws that we've discovered, that everything must operate under them, or that they are the only laws that exist. There's a joke that's told about this sometimes. Are you ready for a joke? It's not that funny, but I don't know, maybe you'll like it. You're driving home one night. It's nighttime. You come to your driveway, you park your car, and you notice that your neighbor is in the street, down on his hands and knees, crawling on the ground underneath the lampposts, looking for something. So you say, oh, maybe I can help. And so you walk over to your neighbor, and you say, hey, what's going on? Did you lose something? And they say, yeah, I lost the keys to my house. You lost them around here? No, I lost them over there. Well, why are you looking over here? Because the light's better over here. Ba-dum. Right? Okay, so what's the idea here? Is that I'm assuming whatever there is to be found is within the realm of my perception. But I'm ignoring that there may be truths outside the realm of my perception. And on what basis? It's people that are making arguments that empiric evidence is what counts. But there's no empiric evidence that all truth lies within the realm of my empiric perception. Where does that assumption come from? How can we grant that any true weight? Isn't it possible that what we see and what we perceive is so limited, and what's going on beyond that limited scope could be entirely beyond, could operate on a whole different set of laws? And so what texts like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and the Upanishads are saying is, we're existing in a realm that operates according to certain laws. We're existing in a virtual reality that has certain programs downloaded and installed into it. One of them is called time, right? That everything is moving and being pushed forward and changed and ultimately destroyed, and then again recreated by the force of time. Another one is called karma, that everything that you do in this world has a reaction that comes back at you. And they're saying that you don't have to live within this realm, that there are ways to transcend this realm. There are ways to be in this realm and be conscious of the other realm, even while you're in this one. And there's ways to actually exit this realm and exist in a realm outside where those laws don't exist, where there is no force of time, and so on. So from what I understand, that when these scientists looked into the atom and they saw this is defying the laws of physics as we know them, they went, and they said, this is reminding us of what we're reading in Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. That's about as far as I know.
I'm definitely not speaking to the scientific definition of quantum theory because that is beyond my... But what I was more speaking to is like this modern conception of quantum reality. Like Giovanni's, one of his retreats is called quantum something. It's become kind of a buzzword. Are you familiar with this quantum? Okay. How would you define quantum? You think yeah? Okay. Thank you so much. I think that from what I can gather, it's this idea that if we can meditate or think into, like, I don't want to say manifestation because that's just doesn't feel right, but I've gathered that there's like a tapping into this space, kind of like how you talk about all this information that we don't see, that if we can change our channeling, we can tap in. But there's this, it's a modern metaphysical, spiritual phenomenon that's quite popular right now. The realm of possibility, the realm of unlimited possibility. Anything?
Okay, that helps define it for me. And it sounds to me like probably the scientists do not like other people using that term that way. That would be my guess, right? That they would say, oh, they're just taking this term and watering it down and giving it their spiritual spin on it or something like that. But that doesn't mean there's not truth in it. So I was just talking about this verse the other day. This is a verse from the Rig Veda. Okay, so that means we're going back to the earliest of the Vedic texts, what people would argue is the oldest knowledge known. And there's a verse there, Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashyanti Surya Diviva Chakshar Atatam Tad Viprasho Vipanyavo Jarvivangsha Samindate Vishnu Yat Paramam Padam. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam, that there is a step, a padam of Vishnu. There's Vishnu's step or Vishnu's platform. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam, and that's the highest step. So they're saying within this material realm, there's different steps, different planetary systems that you can climb up. We're on the earthly planetary system. It's kind of a middle ground. You could climb higher, get to the level of Indra. You can go higher still, go to the level of Brahma. You can go higher still, and you come to planetary systems where only the sages are meditating. But Vishnu Paramam Padam, the highest step is beyond this realm into the realm of Vishnu, or into the realm of Vaikuntha, where the laws that operate in this world don't operate. So Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam, Pasyanti Surya, the Suryas, the wise sages, Pasyanti, they see this realm. Even though they're here, they're seeing that realm. They're in contact with it. They realize it. Diviva Chakshar Atatam, they're seeing it as clear as we see the sun. As clear as we see the rays, just like the rays of the sun reach us, this vision of the spiritual realm is reaching them. Tadviprasho Vipanyavo Jarivangsha, these wise, deeply realized spiritual sages, Samindate, they're illuminating that realm. Samindate Vishnu Paramam Padam, they're illuminating that Vishnu step, that world, into for all of us to see through their words, through their life. They're showing us that, they're illuminating that for us. They're saying to us, there's a realm beyond this realm where there's infinite possibility. And you can do practices here and now to feel it. You could feel your own eternality right now. For instance, an empiricist will say, you're not eternal. You come to an end. You live maybe 80, 90, 100 years, and then you're done. Then a spiritualist comes along and says, no, you're eternal. When the body dies, you don't die. And you can feel it now. You can feel it. How? Well, you have to read these texts and contemplate them and reflect on them and do certain practices. And you'll be able to feel your own eternality. Well, what will that feel like? What will be the evidence that someone's feeling it? Well, when they're threatened by death, they remain peaceful. Then, of course, you can explain that away. Oh, they've just done a mental adjustment in their mind. But they're like, no. You can't deny that someone's necessarily feeling it. You can try. You can believe it that they're not really feeling it. But these sages are saying, no, you can enter into another realm of realization right here and now. Right? So maybe that in some ways in relation to that, your eternality, your divine knowledge, ultimately your bliss. These are all, that's what the spiritual realm is made of, is eternality, knowledge, and bliss. That's what you're made of. You're made of the same energy. That's the quantum fields, right? You're made of the same energy as the quantum field. Now realize it. Now feel it. Do these practices. Contemplate these truths, and you can feel it. Maybe that's.
I think that I've often thought that the quantum field that I'm hearing about, that like, so there's this man Joe Dispenza who's really famous for, he had like a severe injury and he did some sort of breath work and meditation and he was able to heal himself, and now he's teaching others that they can manifest all of these things. And I was just thinking, like, is this still playing in the material with the material energy, or is it tapping into the spiritual energy? That's what I think I'm asking, is the quantum space material or spiritual?
Well, again, what somebody means by quantum, I don't know. So they might be saying there are ways to manipulate the material energy that most people are unfamiliar with, and you can tap into that and make things happen that other people can't make happen. Even in the yoga practice, we see that they say that the yogis, that they Ashtanga yogis. First, they live a certain lifestyle, right? Yama and niyama. No violence, celibacy, no lying, no stealing, no hankering. Then they practice niyama, cleanliness, contentment, austerity, etc., etc. Then they practice. So that's addressing one's lifestyle. I want to settle my mind. I need a lifestyle that will help me settle my mind. Then they do asana, which also helps. It's bodily exercises, but it's stabilizing and making the mind more lucid. Because when all the systems in the body are flowing smoothly, the mind tends to become more lucid. Then breath work, because breath is connected to the mind. Then pratyahara, withdrawing the senses, right? And then deeper levels of concentration, dharana, dhyana, and ultimately samadhi. So that's, once you've learned to settle your lifestyle, your body, your breath, and your senses, then you begin the concentration, the meditation, the focus on one object. And what they say is that in samadhi, the focus has to be so powerful, so complete and exclusive, that when you're observing the object of your meditation in this state of trance, trance means you've lost your external awareness and you're on some deeper internal awareness. But they say that this focus in samadhi, to be samadhi, the focus has to be so exclusive that not only are you aware of only the object of your meditation, but you've actually lost awareness that I'm observing this object. There's only that object is in your awareness and nothing else. Okay? Now, I don't know what that feels like. I can imagine I think maybe you can all imagine that's a very elusive state of awareness to achieve. And that's why only very few rare yogis can do it. And that's why they give up everything and walk up into the mountains to achieve it. But they say that, this is what Patanjali is saying, that when your concentration on a particular object becomes that exclusive and complete, that subtle things about that object are revealed to you that nobody else is observing. And when you see that, when you see what nobody else is observing, then you learn how to manipulate things in ways that other people can't do. So you get mystic cities. You can make objects appear in your palm of your hand. You can read someone's mind. We can't see how to do, like for instance, how does this little machine here, how does this pick up everything on YouTube? Right? The YouTube stuff is floating through the air. I don't know how. And this machine, someone designed it in such a way where it can tap into that and download it. I can't see it. I don't know how to do it. Somebody knows the science. And when you're observing the material energy on this level of trance, you can see how to do it. And you can start to download, oh, zoop, I can read your mind. Let's see what's going on. In that subtle mind of yours, I'm perceiving what's going on. Now, empiricists will say this is all just mumbo jumbo and so on, but no, this yogi knows how to do it. So it's there in the yoga tradition. They can manipulate the material energy and all kinds of manifest things. But is that spiritual? It's actually not even spiritual yet. It's you're just manipulating the material. You're just very aware of the material energy on a level that most people never achieve. But you still haven't come to the spiritual, to the kaivalya, which is the goal of the yoga. And the yogis, the Ashtanga yogis say that one of the problems with Ashtanga yoga is that when you get this power, you become diverted from your spiritual goal and you never achieve it because you become so fascinated by the material realm. So if you want to call that the quantum field, I suppose you could. Then the quantum field is not on the spiritual level. Or you could say then there's another quantum field. If we're using that term again loosely, then there's the spiritual realm, which is a whole other realm. Is that right? Okay, thank you. I don't know those. I'm a simple person. I'm just trying to read my Bhagavad Gita, chant my Hare Krishna mantra, and feel my divine love inside. That's my path. Yeah. Thank you. I think you too. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Yes, sir.
It may be very elementary, but because I don't know a lot of Bhagavad Gita, I don't know a lot of things about this. So I would like to ask, according to this tradition, what is the meaning of life? I mean, like I'm 62, what would be the meaning for life?
Well, that's a good question. It is pretty much the fundamental question. And we could say, what is the meaning of life? Or maybe we could rephrase that slightly to say, what is the purpose of life? What are we doing here? What are we meant to do? And the purpose, there's a Sanskrit word that essentially means purpose, and that's dharma. You've heard the word dharma, right? The yogis say that everything, every object, there is nothing that exists that doesn't have its dharma, that doesn't have its purpose. Okay? There are temporary dharmas that we have. Some purposes that we have are temporary. Like if you have a child, then you take on a new purpose. Now I'm a parent. I didn't have that purpose before, but now I have it. So maybe you get married. Now I'm a husband. Now I'm a wife. I've taken on a new purpose. So there are these purposes that come and go. Temporary purposes, temporary dharmas. But the realized yogis say all of those temporary dharmas, they have a bigger purpose. And that's to uncover the essential dharma. The dharma that never changes. The real, true, unchanging purpose of the self. That's the real dharma, the eternal dharma. And just as the temporary dharmas, I may have one temporary dharma and you may not, right? I may be a husband and you may not, or I may, that's something that's temporary and individual. But the eternal dharma that never changes, that's something that every living being shares in common. We all have that same dharma. And according to the Bhakti yogis, that dharma is loving service. That's what we are meant to do. That's what we were designed to do, right? What is the dharma of these glasses? Right? To help one see it better, right? That's what they were designed for. When they're doing that, they're doing their dharma. Every object has its purpose. So these yogis are saying, if you go deep enough, you understand. I only find my fulfillment when I'm serving with love. And there's an eternal perfect object of love, which is God. And when you love God, you understand God. And when you understand God, you understand that everything is God's energy. And therefore you love everything or everyone. And that's the purpose. That's what we're meant to discover. All the different yoga practices, whether you're chanting a mantra, or doing an asana, or reading and reflecting on a certain text, or doing a particular ritual, all of it is meant to uncover that dharma, the true nature of the self. When we experience that, we're looking for that experience in all kind of external ways, and we're not finding that fulfillment. But when we truly look for that purpose, that by nature I serve with love, when we then now we're on the path to finding it. And when we find it, we'll feel that what they call atma supersidity, the complete satisfaction of the soul. Is that okay? All right, thank you. Yes.
Hello. So we're talking a lot of things to do with ourselves, and I was wondering, how would you approach conflictual relationships? How would you approach conflictual relationships with your loved ones, or if your loved ones are having conflicts between each other? How would you approach that? That makes sense.
So I'll answer that question based on assuming. Repeat the question. This philosophy that we're speaking of Vedanta, Bhakti Vedanta, Bhakti Yoga, how does that apply? How can it be applied to questions of conflicts in one's relationships, family relationships, or other types of relationships? Yes? I accurately conveyed your question? Okay. Now, I'm going to present to you a theory. But in order for the theory to be practiced, it will likely require some faith in the theory, right? But commonly, how does conflict enter our relationships? Two people get married, or they develop a romance, and they become, in a sense, very devoted to each other. They have deep emotional feelings for each other. When they think of the other person, they feel very happy. They want to please the other person, etc. What gets in the way of that? That smooth kind of relation? What interferes with it? And generally, there's going to be a presumption, or let's say what's the word I'm looking for? No, not an anticipation for something, or that's even still not the word I'm looking for. It's slipping my mind right now. Thank you. There's an expectation that this person and my relationship with them is going to make me happy. That I'm going to find this person is going to serve my happiness. I'll find my happiness through my connection with this person. That can be like a romantic partner. That could be a friend. That could be a child. But it could be a parent. But this person, my happiness is going to be this person. You know, there's that famous movie where like the conclusion of the romantic comedy is when the guy turns to the girl and says, "You complete me." Right? You've all seen that, heard that one before? You complete me. And everybody feels like, oh, that's so nice. You see, they completed each other, and now No, when you think you complete me, then you have an expectation that this person is going to act in such a way where I feel complete and I feel completely happy. Now, the yogis would say there's a problem with that right off the bat. What's the first problem with this idea? Who can say? Huh? You're assuming that you're not whole already, that you need someone else to complete you, right? You're assuming that your happiness is lying in something external to yourself. Try to understand that you are whole. By nature, you're whole. You're just out of touch with it. You don't need somebody or something to make you complete or to make you happy. And when you put that expectation on another person, you're already moving down the road to disappointment. And when that disappointment sets in, it's crushing. I thought you were going to make me happy. It usually comes out in words not exactly like that, but it comes out in words like, I thought you cared about me, right? But now I see you don't care about me. So what if we had a relationship where I'm not going to complete you, you're not going to complete me? What if we went into a relationship not saying, I need you to make me happy and I'll make you happy? What if we said, we both are happy by nature. We both are complete by nature. Let's help each other discover that. Let's hold hands and walk in that direction together. I'm taking all my expectations off of you. Now the expectations are coming down a lot. It's like, let's work towards this together, right? But not, I need you to be happy. That's so likely to end in disappointment. Very, very possible, you know. Nowadays, they say majority of marriages end in divorce, right? And then we can imagine many of the ones that don't end in divorce, maybe are still, there's disappointment in them, right? So, this is what I would share. Two people working together for their own self-discovery, or two people working together to awaken their love for God. We're both walking towards God together, rather than you're fulfilling me or I'm fulfilling. We're both going to that place of fulfillment that doesn't bear all of the frailties or the imperfections that we have in this world. Is that helpful? Okay. Right. Two people holding hands, walking towards God together. This is maybe a vision you can keep in mind. Right? Thank you. It's a good question. Right? Makes sense? What are you all thinking about that? Yeah? We're not taught this stuff in school. Why didn't they teach us this? Right? I guess they didn't know either. Right? But I really wish we would discuss these things more with each other. You know? The nature of the self. Welcome, Maharaj. Always such a joy to have you here with us. We have a little bit of time left. Yes, Ken.
Thank you. You complete me. I only remember it from the movie Batman, when Joker was in custody. And do you remember that? Yeah, so they had the most extraordinary love relationship, maybe. Anyway, so I had the privilege of listening to a great Advaita Vedānta teacher yesterday, and he used a word that I've not ever heard in these teachings. He used the word equipment, referring to this, and which is pretty mechanic, that word, yet this being the minder of the Atma, or the Jivatma. And I've heard you speak that there is a spark of Krishna in all of us, and maybe in everything. I might be misquoting you on that. But can you not even answer a question, but can you comment on my curiosity? Might Krishna be experiencing its self, big S, through all of these sparks, these small selves? And in that respect, equipment wouldn't be a very good description. But that's my wondering. Might Krishna, big S, big self, with a big S, be experiencing its own self through these beings?
So this is a very good question. And both schools of Vedanta, whether Advaita Vedanta or Bhakti Vedanta, they will both call this body equipment. And they'll both call the mind equipment, right? That it's all made of matter, that it has no consciousness. The body itself is not conscious. Even the mind itself is not conscious. It's the consciousness of the self or the soul shining through the mind and through the body that animates them and makes them appear alive. Both schools of Vedanta will accept that. Right? But the question is then, here's the thing. Am I, me, an individual spark of God, God's energy? Are you an individual spark of God's energy? Are each one of us an individual spark of God's energy with an eternal relationship with God? Or are we all God and we're temporarily experiencing this world through this body, through that body, through that body, through that body, and through that body? You understand? So that way, that's the way to Vedantan idea, that there's only God, this supreme energy called Brahman. And what do we experience in this world? It's that supreme Brahman experiencing what it's like to be an individual, all these different individuals, right? Now, the way to Vedantins also say that the suffering that we're experiencing in this life is due to ignorance, right? Knowledge or jnana counters the ignorance, and then the individual realizes that I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, these are just equipment. And then I realize I am Brahman, I am that one energy, and then I become free, achieve moksha, and no longer experience the suffering of this body and mind. That's their theory. Make sense? So one impersonal energy is experiencing life through a million different bodies, suffering due to ignorance, and then attaining knowledge and becoming free. The other school of Vedanta says we are God in the sense that we're an emanation of God's energy. We share the same qualities of God, just like the sunlight shares the same qualities as the sun, right? The sunlight is dependent on the sun, but the sun's not dependent on the sunlight, right? The sun is the source. They're ontologically different, but they're made of the same energy. One's the source, one's the emanation from the source. One is independent, and the other is dependent on the independent, right? So ontologically different, but made of the same stuff. So one and different. In that sense, we are God because we're the energy of God, but I'm always me and God's always God, and I'm always dependent on God, and God is always independent. That's the Bhakti Vedanta idea. Now we have to examine which one makes more sense, right? If God becomes covered by ignorance, then ignorance becomes more powerful than God. But by definition, God is all powerful. So how does God become covered by ignorance? And why does God have to find knowledge? Isn't God all knowing? Now, to me, that doesn't make sense. It's a simple question that I can't find a suitable answer for through Advaita Vedanta. Now, how can a little spark of God's energy become covered by God's external energy, that makes sense. If I'm not God, if I'm a spark of God's energy, but I'm not the independent one, I'm a dependent one, then it's possible that God's external material energy or ignorance could cover me. And I would need knowledge to become free of that. To me, that makes sense. Why is the all-powerful one becoming covered by ignorance and then suffering? Right? Now God's walking around with a toothache. Now God's walking around with hemorrhoids. Now God's walking around with a sore knee. Now God's walking around with a bad relationship. Why is the Supreme Brahman coming into these forms and suffering like this? Now the answer they give, I don't find satisfying. Lila. Because we find in the Shruti, in the ancient text, it speaks that God has Lila. But the Bhakti Vedanta gives such a clear understanding of what that Leela is. We see Krishna in his pastimes engaged in activity. Here's the Supreme Brahman. Krishna is the Pada Brahman. Bhagavad Gita defines him as the Pada Brahman. So he is Brahman. But here he is playing. Right? Leela means divine play. Krishna's play is incredibly beautiful, incredibly satisfying. It's the deepest exchanges of love through the most amazing, beautiful adventures. In so many nuances. And it's all laid out to us in the pinnacle of Vedanta, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, the Advaita Vedantas are saying, this is God's Leela. The toothache, the hemorrhoids, the sore knee, the bad relationship. I can't understand how that's lila, right? That's how God wants to come and play. To me, it's an insufficient explanation. They're not explaining how the Supreme becomes covered by ignorance. They're not explaining why this would possibly be a lila that the Supreme would want to perform. But if you were all powerful, if you were independent, well, how would you manifest? What would you do? It seems to me like I'd be doing exactly what Krishna's doing, right? Engaging in loving adventures. That makes perfect sense, right? So that's ultimately one has to decide for themselves what makes more sense. If one has a disposition, I would call it a mental disposition of aversion to the idea that there is a being that's ontologically superior to me, that I have an eternal relationship with of dependence. If that idea bothers me or triggers me, then I might lean towards the way to Vedānta. I might find that explanation more satisfying. Because whatever it is, I don't want to accept that there's a being that's I'm dependent on. But Krishna says, Arjuna, I'm going to explain to you this most confidential knowledge, and you can understand it because there's no envy in you, because there's no hostility in you. When I tell you, connect with me, be dependent on me, take shelter on me, you don't get triggered by that. Therefore, I'm going to share all that with you. That's what's said in Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita is the perfect culmination, the perfect synthesis or perfect summary of the teachings of all the Upanishads. Even Shankar himself will say, Bhagavad Gita perfectly encapsulates the teachings of the Upanishads. And Bhagavad Gita is really clear, where the Upanishads tend to speak in more cryptic language. The Itihasa, the later literature of Vyasadeva, is written to explain the more difficult to understand. And you find it as clear as a bell in Bhagavad Gita. Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That all the living beings in this material world are my eternal fragmental parts. It's not that they're fragmental for some time and then they all merge into one. Eternally they're fragmental, but they're mine. They're my energy, right? So we are one with God in that we are made of God's energy and we have God's qualities. Sat Chit Ananda. But we're different in that we're dependent on God. God's not dependent on us. We have the potential to be covered by the material energy. For our own experience of ourself to be covered by that, God is never covered by that. Always independent, always free. It's good that there's something or someone that's always free, isn't it? Right? That there's something dependable, that there's a shelter out there that we know is beyond the crushing force of time, the crushing force of the material energy. There's something that's always beyond that. We can reach that. We can connect with that. Satatam yuktanam, Krishna is saying, always stay connected to me. And you'll pass over all of this. He says, what is it? Much chita sarva durgani, mat prasada tarisyasi. Much chitta, if you're always conscious of me, then sarva durgani, all of the difficulties of this world, mat prasadat, by my grace, tarisyasi, you'll cross over it all. You know, that's Bhakti Vedānta. Okay. All right. Thank you all so much. It's been wonderful spending this evening with you as always. As always. Thank you. Please, if you would like to hear more of these Q&As or other talks, Gabriella can hook you up with that. I have a podcast called Wisdom of the Sages, over 1,700 episodes. You're welcome to listen to that, available where all podcasts are available. There's wonderful Kirtan going on in this hall. In the mornings, at 8 a.m., there's wonderful yoga classes and more talks on philosophy. And I give classes at 9, from 9 till 10. My friend Yogi Charu, he's the most excellent yoga and meditation teacher you can hope to find. And, of course, the prasadam. Please take advantage of it. This is eating in such a way where you're actually realizing the self and realizing the divine through eating food. Somehow it's possible. Thank you all so very much. Hari Om Tat Sat.